Hi, folks. Let's take a moment to appreciate just how unserious our ruling class has become. We're living in a time where Los Angeles is literally on fire. The left is carrying out terror attacks against federal agents, and your average Democrat thinks cops are more dangerous than criminals. It's like watching a circus where the clowns light the tent on fire and blame the elephants for the smoke. And at center stage, what we have our communist mayor here in Los Angeles, Karen Bass, wringing her hands because ICE dared to arrest criminals at MacArthur Park. Apparently, letting gang members do yoga on city benches is the latest innovation in Democrat urban wellness. When asked why LAPD hasn't solved the glaring issue of drug addicts and MS-13 all over MacArthur Park, well, Bass trots out the classic, these problems can't be solved overnight. Right. Because it only took one night to create them, but fixing things, well, that's a 10-year vision board, a struggle session, and a six-figure DEI consultant. Why? Because solving the problem would mean giving up on the Democrat Marxist grievance narrative and the donor cash that obviously flows along with it. So today, we're diving into the greatest hits of this leftist madness, where sanctuary means lawlessness, criminals get hugs, and the only thing they enforce, well, it's your compliance, obviously.
They've said that MacArthur Park is run by MS-13, that there are gangs, that there's all sorts of problems, drug use there.
And you know what? We have a police department. We have a police department.
Why haven't they done anything?
You think they're doing a good job there, though?
I absolutely think they are, and we've been working together along with the council person.
Have you?
These problems can't be solved overnight.
Oh, can't
The park is in much better situation than it was. We've had a dramatic drop in violent crime. And so what problem were they here to solve? We didn't ask for them to come. Chief McDonald didn't say, hey, we need some help. Nobody asked for their help. So what was the point?
You know, I'm always left in awe whenever I get to witness a politician lie, deflect, and deny with this much ease. It looks effortless, kind of like witnessing the grace Jordan had when he dunked from the free throw line. That is, if Jordan were a morally bankrupt careerist delivering evil by merely grabbing the rim. Now, to be clear, Karen Bass isn't just dodging responsibility, she's reciting the catechism of progressive decay: deny reality, downplay the crime, and demonize anyone who enforces the law. ICE agents have been removing violent criminals from our streets in Los Angeles and shining a spotlight on the depravity that Bass and her fellow Democrats, who've ruled California with Venezuela-style single-party control for over 5 decades, have allowed to fester unchecked in places like MacArthur Park. And instead of gratitude, Bass whines that no one asked for their help. Of course not, because admitting help is needed means admitting failure, and failure breaks the narrative. That's why she leans on the mantra, these problems can't be solved overnight. Translation, we created this crisis over decades, and now we need decades more to pretend we're fixing it because we rely on the crisis to extend our Marxist playbook. This is the modern agenda of the left. Engineer collapse, claim moral high ground, gaslight the public, and blame the people trying to clean it all up. It's not about solutions, if you haven't noticed. It's about preserving the illusion of competence while funneling power and money through nonprofits, the city council, and activist coalitions. And here's the deeper truth. We're not being misled by well-meaning fools. We're being governed by people who need this chaos to stay in power.
So what I saw in the park today looked like a city under siege, under armed occupation. And I have to tell you, spending many years traveling into conflict areas, you know, it's the way a city looks before a coup.
And if there's one person who knows exactly what a city looks like right before a coup, well, that's Karen Bass. The same Karen Bass was trained in Cuba by Fidel Castro's regime in the fine art of political agitation, ideological subversion, Marxist insurgency, and destabilizing governments from within. Now she's deploying every one of those tools right here in our beautiful city of Los Angeles. And you see it as clear as day in her response to a lawful ICE operation. Not by asking why violent criminals were allowed to operate unchecked in MacArthur Park, you know, the same public park she's responsible for securing, but by accusing the federal government of staging a military occupation, as if enforcing immigration law or bringing attention to the shameful urban decay she has allowed to fester in the middle of our city were some kind of fascist coup. This isn't just delusional rhetoric, by the way. It's a deliberate reframing of her own failure to perform the basic duties of a mayor and represent the interests of LA residents, all while casting federal enforcement as overreach. It reveals how deeply embedded Marxist ideology has become within the Democrat Party, where the mayor of the second largest city in the country now sees herself as some kind of sovereign ruler, unbound by federal law and willing to nullify it whenever it inconveniences her activist coalition. And by the way, in case you haven't noticed, Bass has zero interest in actually protecting communities. If she did, MacArthur Park would have been cleaned up years ago. Her actual real concern is protecting the chaos that sustains her power, which once again exposes the left's open contempt for law, order, and our national sovereignty.
What I do know is that the Custom Border Patrol was definitely there. I have been told that the National Guards and the Marines were playing different roles, some on the periphery, but that we don't know that for sure. That is the problem. We have a lot of people who are not in uniform at all, wearing street clothes with vests, but the vests sometimes say nothing more than police, or it says nothing at all. Jumping out of unmarked cars with tinted windows, no license plate, wielding guns, pulling people off the street. That is the scene in LA right now, and it's shameful because there isn't that we were not having problems before the first raid, which was June 6th. The administration has brought deliberately chaos in a situation, chaos and fear, because people around the city now are afraid to go to work.
Let's make one thing clear. The only people actually afraid to go anywhere in Los Angeles right now are the ones who've broken the law. Everyone else, well, they're out living their lives, sitting in traffic, hitting the gym, going to work, same as always. And ironically, now that ICE is doing its job, life is actually getting better. Crime is on the down, traffic's easing in certain areas, and people are posting about how much safer they feel walking through neighborhoods that used to be no-go zones. But Karen Bass can't have that, because when order returns, the narrative dies. So her MSDNC meltdown isn't about justice or safety, it's about control. Painting ICE agents as secret police in unmarked cars is classic bad faith fear-mongering, meant to confuse the public and protect the very chaos her policies created. This moment lays bare how deeply invested the modern left is in maintaining this function. They depend on fear to mobilize, identity politics to distract, and a compliant media to reframe enforcement as some kind of oppression. It is so unbelievably insane that she's actually on television advocating for crime. And if that means shielding criminals while gaslighting the public, then so be it. That's how she does it. Because in today's progressive playbook, the real crime isn't breaking the law, it's actually enforcing it. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, as mayor, my number one responsibility is to keep Angelenos safe.
How?
Now, it never dawned on me that I would have to worry about keeping Angelenos safe from my own government.
What?
From military that are supposed to be overseas fighting foreign enemies.
What?
From the Custom and Border Patrol. We're about 2.5 hours away from a border.
Oh my God,
from
dude.
the National Guard that have been federalized unnecessarily. You know, this is an example of the federal government essentially seizing power from a governor, federalizing the National Guards, bringing them to Los Angeles when nobody asked for them. These are young women and men that have been pulled out of work. They've been pulled from their families. They've been pulled from school for an assignment that is basically, I mean, I don't know what this is other than a political stunt.
You just
I
said
do
they should
feel
be
like LA is
overseas.
a petri dish. And we are the experiment and basically sending the signal to the nation that this is what's coming your way.
You're
First
retarded.
LA, let's see who's next.
Now let's unpack this contradiction slowly, because the cognitive dissonance is staggering here. So if I understand this correctly, the mayor of Los Angeles is outraged that the National Guard is being deployed domestically to help federal agents enforce immigration law in our beautiful city overrun by cartel-linked crime, but would apparently prefer they be sent overseas to fight foreign wars. In one breath, she's echoing the military-industrial complex's thirst for endless interventionism, and in the next, she's hand-wringing about young service members being pulled from their families for a local assignment. You can't have it both ways, lady. Either you want soldiers deployed abroad or you want them home. What you don't want, clearly, is them disrupting the lawless sanctuary status quo that helps your coalition stay in power. And that's what this is really about. Bass isn't defending the National Guard. She's defending the criminal infrastructure she's helped nurture. Her entire narrative is just a pure smokescreen, meant to portray federal enforcement as tyranny while masking her own failure to protect the people of Los Angeles. It's not about policy. It's purely about optics. It's about power. It's about preserving a broken system that treats chaos as virtue and enforcement as sin. And I refuse to believe this woman is this retarded. This is calculated. But it shows just how malleable and slimy these communist Democrats are. One minute, they're demanding the military stay out of domestic affairs. The next, they're mourning that troops aren't deployed elsewhere to uphold American imperialism abroad. It's not a moral stance. It's a shell game. The goal isn't coherence. It's control. Bass will say anything that casts federal immigration enforcement as oppressive while protecting the ecosystem of lawlessness her political power depends on. These are not accidental contradictions. They're features of an ideology built on weaponized victimhood, selective outrage, and permanent Marxist grievance-led revolution. And it tells you everything you need to know about the modern left. They don't care about where their power comes from, only that they wield it. And they will bend every institution, be it the military, the media, law enforcement, whatever they can get their slimy hands on, into a tool of narrative warfare if it keeps the machine running.
The federal government is not leaving LA. I don't work for Karen Bass. The federal government doesn't work for Karen Bass. We're going to be here till that mission's accomplished, as I said, and better get used to us now, because this is going to be normal very soon.
What do you say to that?
I just have to say that I think that it's pathetic. I mean, last I checked, all of us work for the American people. And so,
you don't.
As I said, I am the duly elected official here to represent the city, and it is my job to protect the city. I was not interfering. It is my responsibility to ask, what are you doing here in this park where nothing is going on? Why are you grabbing people off the street, making a lot of people believe that kidnappings are taking place? You know, we have whole sectors of the city now and the economy that has come to a halt. Our fashion district, 4,000 independent businesses, is a ghost town. We have restaurants and other places of work where the workforce is afraid to come in. Having restaurant owners tell me that this is worse than COVID. So this is damaging to our economy. It's damaging especially to the children. And this is all about a political stunt. And I think it's really sad to disrupt people's lives. We don't know where people are taken. We don't know if they're in the state. They have no contact with their families, no contact with lawyers. They're held in inhumane conditions. They're held in mass cells with 300 people in them, and that are designed for, maybe 30 or so, multiple beds. In the detention center, where they're only supposed to be held for a day or less, and they've been held there for many days and in some cases weeks.
I actually cannot believe that Los Angeles elected such a profoundly incompetent and evil human being to be the mayor of our beautiful city. It's a disgrace. And not just because Karen Bass is wrong about everything, but because her rhetoric is dangerously detached from reality and designed to manipulate public perception through fear and confusion. Here we have a mayor openly defending lawlessness, accusing federal agents of kidnapping, folks, kidnapping criminals in broad daylight, and blaming ICE for an economic slowdown in districts historically known for tax evasion, counterfeit goods, and black market labor. She claims the economy has come to a halt, as if enforcing immigration law is somehow more destructive than decades of failed Democrat governance, rising crime, and unchecked corruption from these fucking socialists. I'm sorry, I am so unbelievably just taken aback by the shamelessness. Bass's argument collapses under its own weight. If there was nothing going on in the park, why were people arrested? As if arrests were unjust. Where's the evidence? Instead, we're given emotional appeals, conspiracy-laced language, and cartoonish claims about mass detentions in hidden facilities, all to distract from the basic truth. Los Angeles has become a haven for illegal activity under her watch. And now that the federal government is doing what she won't, she's throwing a tantrum. This is what happens when radical ideology replaces actual leadership. When narrative becomes more important than safety, and the only victims that matter are the ones that help push her narrative forward. Anyway, as you've likely noticed, we're watching clip after clip after clip of Bass because ever since the federal government decided to enforce the law of the land here in Los Angeles, Bass has been going on a media blitz. She's been using this as an excuse to hold numerous press conferences every single day, to go on every single news show you can imagine. She's on MSDNC, on basically every place that will put her on TV so she can just spout out her propaganda. She's there. So there's an abundance of Bass clips right now, and the market isn't saturated yet with her idiocies. Anyway, this is from a press conference she held yesterday where she ended up taking questions amazingly, and this is how it went.
Our city is definitely united. You don't see dissension here.
Oh.
You see a city that is united because this is who we are. We are a city of immigrants, and we will stand with Angelenos regardless of what country they came from, when they got here, or why they're here.
You know, I'm technically an immigrant, and I'm not with you. And I know a bunch of other immigrants who aren't with you either. Karen Bass doesn't speak for immigrants. She speaks for herself and the Democrats that spent decades using immigration as a shield for lawlessness and a tool for power. Her claim that Los Angeles is united is laughable. The city is fractured, overwhelmed by crime, and quietly boiling with resentment from legal residents and working class Americans who are watching their neighborhoods collapse under the weight of open borders and the failed Democrat leadership. Bass invokes the Constitution while opposing its enforcement, weaponizing emotional language like terror and trampling to distract from the fact that federal agents are targeting criminals, not families going to church. But this is the game, folks. Redefine enforcement as oppression, equate citizenship with just paperwork, that's why they say undocumented, and brand any resistance to chaos as hate. What we're witnessing is the hollowing out of civic responsibility, where identity politics replaces the rule of law and loyalty to the Democrat Party replaces duty to the American people. If you want to see the end game of progressive governance, you don't have to look any further than Los Angeles, a city where the mayor sues her own country to protect illegal activity and then calls it justice. Yes, you heard that right. She announced a lawsuit against America. She's suing America, folks, so that she can obstruct justice here. We're going to get to that in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Mayor Bass, this is kind of more of a broader national question. Reports indicate that ICE agents and police officers in Texas have been targeted in ambushes, including in Alvarado, where assailants in tactical gear allegedly lured officers with fireworks before opening fire. Given your strong opposition to federal immigration enforcement actions in Los Angeles, how would you address similar escalations of violence against law enforcement in Texas? And what steps would you propose to prevent such unrest from spreading to Los Angeles while balancing community safety in your sanctuary city policies?
Well, let me just say that the quote-unquote riots that were reported never happened.
What?
We did have a couple of incidences of vandalism and looting, but the way it was portrayed nationally was like the whole city was up in flames. The comparison to 1992, which was completely 100% inappropriate. And I think the example that you use, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it. It was from some other state.
Yes, Texas.
Yeah,
11.
So I have no idea what happened in Texas. What I do know is what happened in Los Angeles.
11 people were
happening in Los Angeles has been completely.
Mayor, 11 people were arrested for trying to attack ICE agents and federal law enforcement. So I was just trying to get your perspective on how you're going to contain the situation here in Los Angeles and the unrest.
I can't respond to Texas.
Okay. Thank you.
So let me see if I get this straight. Karen Bass is now pretending the riots that I and countless other journalists spent 7 days covering never happened. The smashed windows, the 28-plus looted stores in just 2 days, the torched Waymo cars, the cops getting hit by rocks, the estimated $20 million in LAPD overtime just to restore order, none of that happened. Then why did Bass do a photo op downtown scrubbing graffiti off of a vandalized building if there was nothing to clean up? This level of gaslighting isn't just shameless, it's strategic. It's part of a broader effort by progressive politicians to rewrite history, downplay lawless behavior, and protect the ideological narrative that all unrest is either justified protest Remember the George Floyd riots? Or right-wing fantasy? And Bass takes that strategy even further by refusing to condemn the terror attack on ICE agents in Texas, an ambush carried out by Democrat agitators, and brushing off these escalating assaults on law enforcement as if they're someone else's problem. At this point, it's crystal clear where her priorities lie. It's not with safety, truth, or accountability. It's with preserving political cover for an activist base that thrives on manufactured grievance, sustained chaos, and violence. This is what happens when ideology replaces governance, when loyalty to the movement trumps loyalty to the law and to your electorate, and when media, education, and institutions become echo chambers instead of checks on power. And it's never been more obvious because instead of representing the people of Los Angeles, Bass is out here meeting with a Mexican consul general to coordinate resistance against her own federal government. Here's what she posted about it on X, saying, I just met with Ambassador Carlos Gonzalez Gutierrez, Consul General of Mexico in Los Angeles, to discuss the ongoing ICE raids in our city. Los Angeles remains committed to protecting the rights and dignity of all Angelenos. Now let's be clear, absolutely crystal clear. When a U.S. mayor holds diplomatic-style meetings with foreign officials to undermine domestic law enforcement, that's not public service. That's subversion. Straight out of the Cuban Marxist playbook. Bass isn't protecting Angelenos by doing this. She's protecting the political utility of illegal immigration. She's signaling to foreign governments that Los Angeles is open for defiance, open for exploitation, and closed off to federal authority. This is what sanctuary politics have become. Performative rebellion against the rule of law, wrapped in the language of dignity, while prioritizing foreign interests over American citizens.
Just finished working with our city attorney to file a lawsuit because we have to stop this mess. You know, the idea of having troops go through the park and disrupt a children's summer camp or drive through the streets and just pick people off the streets. We don't know if a kidnapping is happening or what. And so our city attorney is leading the way. We're filing a lawsuit. We're calling for an injunction for this to stop. We need to remember who we are as a country. I'm very clear as to who we are as a city, and I'm clear about my job, which is to make sure that this city is safe for all Angelenos, regardless of when you came here, what country you came from, or why. We got to stop it, and I know, you know what? We're going to stand strong because this city is united. We are not divided, and we're not going to let anybody divide us.
This woman is oozing with pride like Slimer from Ghostbusters at an all-you-can-eat buffet, and you can see it in every single smug micro-expression she releases. She's high on the manic delusion that she can waste taxpayer money filing a frivolous lawsuit to subvert federal authority. Spoiler alert, you can't, lady. Let's be clear, Karen Bass isn't just out of her depth here. She's openly defying the Constitution while pretending to defend it. Her claim that ICE agents are picking people off the street like kidnappers isn't just false. It's calculated propaganda meant to stoke fear and obscure her real goal, protecting an illegal shadow population the Democrat machine relies on for votes, for census counts, for congressional seats. Are you catching the drift? What she's really saying is that no law applies in Los Angeles unless she personally endorses it. And that exposes the deeper rot, a political class of progressive elites who no longer see themselves as public servants, but as ideological gatekeepers, shielding their cities from federal law and branding any attempt at enforcement as tyranny. This is the left's terminal inversion of justice, where the law is the problem, crime is rebranded as compassion, and unity means unconditional submission to the Democrat narrative. Now, it's never been more evident that these Democrat communists like Bass hate America, and they hate you too. They want to dismantle this country by any means necessary, and any semblance of law and order is a threat to that agenda. That's why every time law enforcement steps in to restore basic sanity, they scream, oppression! Because deep down, they know their power depends on chaos and Marxist grievance to keep going. So ask yourself, why does the Democrat ruling class always side with the criminals over the citizens? Why do they always rewrite riots as peaceful, brand enforcement as fascism, and treat foreign governments with more respect than the people paying their salary? It's never been more evident that this isn't about politics. It's a cultural revolution wrapped in bureaucracy and PR. They're not interested in actually serving you and serving the public. They're interested in transforming it, in atomizing families, in erasing national identity, in making you feel powerless in your own country. So the question is, how much longer are you going to let them lie to your face and call it progress? You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.